Welcome to Rankin on Bass, an offhand joke that just won't go away. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me, of course, is a man who knows all kinds of jokes about being a window washer, Mr. Chris Dashew.
They go up, they go down, they go up, and they go down.
Also with this is a real bitchy boss, Mr. Richard Haddam.
I don't know what you're doing in that office all day, but it has nothing to do with producing a book for Wonder Corporation.
Wow. I'm
Yeah.
impressed.
Ugh.
I was not expecting that, so there you go.
I mean, it's like one degree away from Charlie in the box. I mean, it's
Nobody wants a Charlie in the box.
the voices of the characters in this are so exaggerated. Oh my. It's a lot.
On this podcast, we discuss the works of Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass, specifically some of their stop motion and animated work. And on this one, we are talking about the last episode of the first season of the ABC Saturday Superstar movie called That Girl in Wonderland. And guys, we are just about to break my wife. She is asked to please never play that again. You've really been scraping the bottom of the barrel as far as all this Rankin and Bass stuff. That's almost a direct quote.
I'm going to point something out. Mike, your wife is finally where my wife was every Mike White March. I am done. I am through. Do not subject me to this any longer. I hope you at least watch like an episode or two of That Girl with your wife to wash the taste out of That Girl. And see, I watched an episode or two of That Girl just so I could have some frame of reference as to what I was supposed to compare this to, given that I mean, without the show That Girl, it's just a title that makes zero sense.
Well, I used to watch That Girl when it was on, not originally, because I think it was off the air before I was born, but I definitely watched a lot of That Girl to the point where when she is talking with Donald, I'm like, oh, Donald, yeah, that was her boyfriend / fiance's name. Okay. And I'm just like putting stuff together, but this does not capture why you should be watching That Girl. I mean,
Not
in
at
my
all.
opinion. Right?
Oh no. That Girl show, Marlo Thomas, insanely charismatic, insanely charming. This cartoon, other than the fact of where we had to watch it, which again, it's on YouTube, otherwise known as in the show notes. Yeah. Saturday Superstar Special. Rankin was not putting their best foot forward if they were even attempting to put a foot forward at all.
It was Ted Bessel who played Donald Hollinger, who was her boyfriend in That Girl. And then that character is represented in this animated special, but it's voiced by Ted Schwartz instead of Ted Bessel. And I'm like, oh, well, why couldn't it just be him?
Right. Maybe he wanted nothing to do with this, or maybe he was busy.
Yeah, maybe.
It's like the Star Wars holiday special. We just don't talk about it. Just pretend like it doesn't exist.
Richard, what did you think of this special?
Well, I didn't hate watching it to the degree that I have hated watching certain other ones. It wasn't great. The presence of Marlo Thomas, I mean, I'm already 50% in because I love her. And she's also one of my people, the Lebanese. Oh, no jokes. Okay, I'll go on.
Yeah.
So then,
what am I going to make?
What
a
are we
joke
gonna
about?
say?
Your
Yeah.
proud people, the fine Lebanese people. I'm a huge fan of MASH and Jamie Farr, one of your kings amongst men. So
that's right.
no jokes. I'm not going to mix it up with lesbians or anything like that, Ellen. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, now you've just gone through all the various jokes.
And
you
who
could make.
doesn't like
All right, great.
kibbe? I mean, kibbe's delicious. I go back to
Oh
the
my
kibbe.
God, look,
all
you
about
know
the
kibbe.
kibbe, baby.
Yeah, all right. I forgot, you know,
They're
because
little
you're a
footballs.
chef. Yeah. All right. All right. Anyway, you know, I love her. And you know, the animation style. Now, this seemed to be yet another animation style that wasn't what we have seen before, which is fine. I will say this though, and tell me if I'm being crazy / racist / pervy. But did the Anne Marie character seem to be illustrated in a way that reminded you more of Japanese animation, more like anime? That sort of big block of black hair, giant eyes with big black pupils. I was sort of like, oh, this is like kind of how the women are illustrated in the anime shows that my son watches now, 50 years later.
Yes, actually, you took the words right out of my mouth. It is exactly that. And what's weird is she is the only character represented that way. All the other characters, like the boss character, is like, she looks like the way that she talks. Like, all the characters look the way that they talk, essentially. The woman on the phone who answers the phone, just the most. Can you imagine having to say that every time you answer the phone in a real world setting? Mind you, in a fairy tale, just, I want to die. But she's the only.
Wow, what a difference. Thank you for calling Blockbuster. Yeah.
Wait a second. Is that a part of your personal history there, Mike?
That is. Yeah. Yeah. I worked Blockbuster. I worked at 3 Blockbuster locations from 1992 to about 1996 or 7.
At least you didn't have to sing song Blockbuster.
Right. There is
Wait, so how did it go? Did you say hello? Wow, what a difference. Or you just pick up and go, wow, what a difference. This is Blockbuster.
No.
How can I help you?
I think it was more like that. It was either that or thank you for calling Blockbuster. Wow, what a difference. But it makes more sense to answer with the wow.
Well, I used to answer the phone. Hello, let us amuse you. Laugh and learn comedy traffic school. I can help you.
Wow.
That's when I worked at the traffic school. And one day a week, I'd work in the office to earn a few extra bucks. And it was their big innovation was, you don't say, how can I help you? You simply assert, I can help you.
Wow.
And then you let them say, I got a ticket and I need to sign up for a class in Chula Vista.
Hey, you bring the excitement, Richard. They just bring the, court order time.
They just bring the paperwork and the $29 in cash.
Yeah,
right,
court orders are a hell of a thing.
Oh, yeah. I won't go into that. Some things need to remain secret.
God. I will say, though, to your point, Richard, they definitely made her the more conventionally beautiful of all the characters, if the only character that could be considered not kind of off-putting to look at.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Donald was the attractive male character. So they're like our romantic leads.
Though Donald looked a lot like the window washer guy to me. There was the one fantasy that she has. Oh, I guess it was the Wizard of Oz part of it, where one was the scarecrow. I think it was the window washer was the scarecrow and Donald was the Tin Man. And I was having a hard time keeping them straight at that point.
And I guess for me, the thing that my expectation was, it was going to be somehow Marlo Thomas's character in these fantasy settings. And I didn't know what it was going to be. And I feel like the framing device doesn't work really well. Like it's so, for all the complaints that we've had about, oh, hello, I didn't see you there. Let me tell you a story. Like, for all of the complaints and kind of are like poking fun at that because of how ham-fisted it is, when they try to do something more narratively, I wouldn't say complex, but different, markedly different, it really doesn't work. Like at all, frankly.
Well, it felt very breakneck. Like as I'm watching it, I was getting tired just because I was moving so fast to the point where I was like, is this sped up? Like,
right.
But their voices didn't sound sped up, but they just were talking so fast and things were happening so fast that I was just like, this feels very bizarre. It feels like it's running, 100 miles an hour when it should be more like 55.
And it was a little bit hard to settle in on what the real problem or, like the real plot problem. Essentially what happens, the setup of the show is that Anne-Marie comes in to interview for the position of secretary at this children's book publishing company. And what ends up happening is she displays such knowledge that they assume she's coming in to interview for the job of assistant editor, which apparently is also a position that's open. And so rather than reveal that she was there to be a secretary, she just goes with it. Yes, that's exactly what I'm here for. And then they're like, okay, well, if you can come up with a really great idea for a book that we can put on our sort of December release schedule, you will get that job. You've got 1 week, I think, or they give her an amount of time. And so now that's her goal. That's what she wants to do. But what gets in the way of that isn't super clear. She immediately sort of, establishes contact with Donald Hollinger, her boyfriend, and they sort of have a charming interaction. They are clearly happy with each other, and they're just having sort of normal boyfriend girlfriend troubles. But it was a little hard to figure out beyond just her kind of, various things happening as she's trying to think of a good book. There was no sort of other real thing going on. Yes, the other women in the office kind of try to sabotage her a little bit, but beyond that, there oddly wasn't a lot going on here.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's like a rom-com type of situation, but just plays out in a very odd way. I mean, I could see this being live action with what's her name, Kate Hudson, and I don't know, Ryan Reynolds maybe is playing Donald.
Well, it's like it kept walking right up to the edge of being about Donald being frustrated because her work was keeping her too busy so that they couldn't date. Mm-hmm. Now, in a more adult sort of world of storytelling, that they might have been able to go all the way, and maybe they felt like, well, kids aren't going to get that, but I think it would have been great. Now, they didn't do that on the date or on the night when they finally have time for a date, and Donald is like, great, finally we can go to the Knicks game, I got tickets. She's busy, but she's not busy doing anything work related or pursuing her career. She's busy sort of spending the money she doesn't have yet, going to get guitar lessons and going to meet with a designer to redecorate her apartment and going to buy new clothes, which isn't really the best feminist look, but okay, this is for kids and it was 1974. Maybe that wasn't what they wanted to do. But if you wanted to just take another half step, the plot of it could have been, Donald, I'm really busy now pursuing my dream job, and you've got to be okay with that because you've got your dream job. So rather than whining and mewling about how we're not seeing the Knicks, maybe you help me out a little bit. And at the end of this, when I succeed, everyone's happy.
And we'll be back with these commercial breaks with Yogi Bear on Noah's Ark and Huckleberry Hound with the Shroud of Turin.
Yeah, my wife was just like, who's this cartoon for? This is not for little kids. And I'm like,
it is not. It is not for little kids. And like, that's the other thing that's strange. Like, the advertisements are for little kids, but then the actual cartoon that is meant to be the entertainment part is just, that girl's not for kids anyway. No. Like, I guess it could be, but it's for kids in the same way that all of that television can be for kids, in that it's inoffensive and doesn't necessarily push the I mean, I Love Lucy can be for kids. You know what I mean? Like, I watched plenty of it growing up. It's not really for kids, but I wouldn't say it's in any way not made in a way that kids could enjoy. But this cartoon, like, I just don't get who this is for. Similarly to Red Baron, but I think in this it makes even less sense because the source material that they're placing in these classic stories of old is I mean, she's a character, but why this story? Like, it's why is she in Hansel and Gretel all of a sudden? It's just it's so strange.
It's like that knee-jerk sort of impulse of, we have to go to this sort of public domain fairy tale place. That's what the kids want to see. And if we're not doing that, then it's got to be about them consuming shit because kids want to consume stuff. So it's got to be about her buying stuff. Right. And it's like, well, okay, well, that's what we got.
Kids love playing guitar.
Again, the relationship between her and Don Hollinger was really sweet. There was nothing like overtly offensive or like he's being an asshole,
well, he's calling her 6, 7, 8 times before she even gets to work. And I'm like, dude, you better back off. Like, when can we talk? When am I going to call you? Da, da, da. I'm like,
is that your crone of a boss again, lady?
She is at work. Do not bother someone when they're at work. At most, you text them, but you don't have phone call conversation.
No, you call their boss's office while they're in the meeting with the boss and then go, is that you imitating your boss again?
That piece of shit.
Yeah. She's right behind me, isn't she?
Right.
It was kind of interesting. Oh, I guess they're in the same building though. So I guess but I'm like, she is arriving at this place that she's never been for the first time and he's calling her there.
Right.
But then it's like, oh, they're working in the same building. And so he's just, I guess, calling downstairs. So it's sort of like, hey, how's the meeting going? But again, I think he could have been more supportive. I think he could have been more on board with, well, what do we need to do to help you get this job? It's like, let me help. You need to, let's go on a carriage ride through Central Park and maybe you'll come up with some ideas. Or something. I mean, like, I don't know. I know I'm trying to rewrite this thing 50 years later. I'm sorry, I'm on strike. I'm going a little crazy over here.
Pencils down here, Richard. Come on. You can't be rewriting anybody's work. Right
I'm scabbing.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, even the thing with like, oh, I got us tickets for the Knicks and the game's in 5 minutes. It's like, unless Anne Marie's really into basketball, you don't just spring that on somebody.
No, that was a little, frustrating. And then I don't know that she ever really resolved the women who already work there, the phone operator and the other secretary sort of start out as the weird like nemesis to her, like, oh, we're gonna screw things up for her for some reason, I guess, because bitches be crazy or something was the
you've seen 9 to 5, Richard. Peggy Pope at 9 to 5. That's her whole thing. It's just like, I'm gonna tell the boss on you so I can get ahead because dissent must be crushed in the workplace.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get, but fine. Then, you want to start there, fine. But then it didn't turn into like throughout the course of the show. It's like, oh, wait a second. They actually become allies. Like somehow they realize, why are we fighting against each other? This could be great. Or say, you know what I mean? I don't know. Again, rewriting it 50 years later, but why not at least have a little forward motion with these character relationships? So at the end, they're like kind of pulling strings to help her set her up for success. And then at the end, they all celebrate. It's like, oh, at first we didn't like you, but now it's awesome. You're going to be here. Yay.
Yeah, that transition, if that transition really happens, is like, what? When did you guys start to like her? When did you stop making her get coffee? And what is the time span of this whole thing?
Yeah.
And she had such a problem when she would go into these fugue states and start to imagine all of these characters around her inside of the fantasies, very Wizard of Oz. And then people would come up and be like, Anne Marie, we have to do this or that or the other thing. And she just starts like, she's still in the fantasy. And I'm like, wait a second, you should be able to snap out of this a lot quicker than you are right now.
Anne Marie, quick, there's a propane leak. We gotta get you out of this house. I can see Wonderland. The rabbits are talking to me. It's like the Oracle at Delphi. She just starts like sitting in a room, just like tripping and imagining her for whatever reason on top of everything else. And here's I think this was the strangest thing for me. The framing device to all this was a reason to get Marlo Thomas into these stories, right? I mean, I think we would all agree, like the whole point of this is just to get the three or four characters from the real world into these stories and have her in those stories interacting with them. But it is just such an uninteresting way because it doesn't feel organic. And I'm not saying like there's a good way to do this, but there's got to be a better way than this where it's just like, I'm just going to sit at my desk and trip for a half an hour. Like, wait a second here.
It's like nothing did double duty. It wasn't like, oh, I'm having problems with Donald, but in these stories, he's the perfect boyfriend. But then by the end, I kind of learn, that I don't need a Prince Charming. I just need someone who's on my side or whatever. I was just going to say, is it Stu Hempel, who's the teleplay writer, I believe?
I believe you're right. Yes.
Yeah. Which have we seen him before? Has he done other Rankin Bass?
Don't think so.
The name doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah. Nothing about what he was doing necessarily felt kind of like you were joking at the beginning. It didn't start with, what? You've never heard the story of Anne Marie getting a job as assistant editor at a New York-based children's book publishing company? Well, sit down, kids. You're going to love this.
These are the lost chapters of that girl.
I honest to God thought that the framing device of this was going to be like she like hits her head.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. Good. I'm glad it wasn't just me.
No.
I thought it was going to be like something to the effect of a framing device that would allow her to go to Wonderland. I didn't assume that Wonderland is like the name of the magazine.
Right. Exactly.
Right. It's like beyond idiotic as far as I'm concerned. Like the idea of just not doing the easy thing here and making it so complicated. I get that they were trying to do something maybe at the time they thought this was novel and, it's not just the lazy thing. But I wouldn't have considered this lazy if they had done that. I would have considered it just, well, that's what I expected, which there's nothing. In a lot of ways, there's nothing wrong with meeting expectations. But when you do something so drastically different that it's not much of anything, it's just it's just so drab and just not entertaining.
Yeah.
And Marlo Thomas as Anne-Marie cannot save this. That's the other thing. If this were live action, she might be able to, but because it's just her voice performance, she can't save it.
Well, and it goes back to that same problem that we've talked about for the last, I think, quite a while, definitely since Anna and the King. This whole we're going to wedge a pet in here.
Oh my God.
Who cares about this stupid dog? Like, it doubles as Toto in the Wizard of Oz section, but otherwise it's just there.
No, you got to have an animal. That's a law.
Wow.
I'm disappointed it wasn't a talking animal.
I was kind of hoping at least in those
with an ethnic accent.
Oh, there you go. Lebanese accent. You think maybe Danny Thomas comes in and does some voice work?
Oh,
little girl, what are you doing?
It's I guess the other question that I have in all of this, obviously, we've talked about Rankin and Bass, and they're kind of taking of other famous people and utilizing them in I don't want to say creative ways, but utilizing them. Danny Kaye, Bing Crosby, Burl Ives. I mean, is this now the worst? I think this might be up there for like the worst utilization of like a exterior talent that Rankin and Bass has had. It's so just. It's like to say it's low hanging fruit might not even be strong enough.
Dude, we just came off of Willie Mays.
Yeah, but at least it was still a sports thing. Like at least it was still a sports thing. It's not like they took Willie Mays and they dropped him in the middle of the Sahara Desert, and they were like, "Well, ride a camel to go see the pyramids and tell us about them." Like this is just so bizarre. It's like it doesn't even trade in the good things that Marlo Thomas brings to that girl. Because like I said, I watched the first episode of that girl, and she's very charming from the first moment she's on screen.
Oh yeah.
That girl's good. It's good.
Yeah,
and it's free on YouTube right now.
Wow. Yeah, I was very disappointed that they didn't actually get to use the That Girl theme song, and I was really hoping they would do an animated version of the That Girl opening.
I know, me too.
Yeah, because that's one of the most classic openings. That and Mary Tyler Moore. I mean, they're right up there together.
Yeah. Young women in the city. In fact, I think That Girl, when people discuss sort of late 60s, early 70s, female lead television, That Girl comes up as, well, Anne-Marie was really the first single girl pursuing a career, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, yeah, she was technically single, but she was always with Don Hollinger.
Right.
She had a boyfriend and it played a large role in her life, whereas Mary did not have one consistent partner. Although, oddly enough, in the 7th season of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Ted Bessel did show up for more than one episode as a boyfriend of hers.
Well, maybe that's why he was too busy to do That Girl in Wonderland.
Yeah, well.
It's also weird then the optics of giving her a secretary at the end of the cartoon.
Right.
Is that not like because again, like to your point, Richard, like the idea of Anne-Marie in the actual show never gets married. I mean, it's a pretty strong message for the mid 70s or mid 60s, early 70s, right? Like you don't need to be defined by a man or, your relationships. You can just be you. Like, and then to give her a female secretary in this cartoon and that be like a gag, it's just like, again, like gender politics and optics aside, like it wasn't a weird thing, I guess, when this came out, but like to look at it now, it's like, that's a little odd.
I know it is. Again, it's like you kind of have to take feminism where it was.
Right.
The idea that it's like, as a young woman, I would have a position of authority such that I would earn a subordinate is a huge feminist leap forward that the boss is a woman. Now, of course, the secretary is going to be a woman. That's not questioned. And that there will be a subordinate. That's not questioned. The fact that the boss of that subordinate is female, wow, grab your hats.
Mm-hmm. What's really odd, I did look up the writer since we were talking about him, and he was really known more as a children's book author than anything else. Though he did write some plays, he wrote some musicals, of course, he wrote some television shows, but he was working a lot on, he did a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs adaptation, The Great Radio Comedians for PBS. But yeah, just an odd choice of who to pick to write your That Girl in Wonderland story.
For a minute, I thought maybe he was a That Girl writer.
Right.
That would have made more sense.
Yeah. But I guess it's like, no, we need, someone who knows the children's book industry. This is going to be a quasi documentary.
I guess I just don't understand who this was for, because you got to figure out who this is for before you make it. And if we still can't figure out who it's for after watching it, it's like, I don't think you guys really had a strong sense of the ideas you really wanted to get across here. Cause there are other things. I mean, we know Rankin and Bass does Jackson 5 and the Osmonds. Like, those are things that are much more facing towards a younger generation than That Girl is. At least,
Yeah.
At least for the Saturday morning crowd, the crowd that's going to have Sugar Smacks advertised to them as a healthy option in the morning. Yeah. Fucking, I forgot that the Sugar Smack bear is like doing a patois too. It's I forgot that he's a cool jive bear, as they would say.
Yeah, he so reminds me of Dean Martin. He's just got that voice, or a little bit more like Bing Crosby, I guess.
I don't know, but it feels scary and aggressive. It feels like he should be driving a van.
Yeah.
Well,
hey, who likes Honey Smacks? You like Honey Smacks? Like, I'm good. Or Sugar Smacks. Honey Smacks, that's the frog.
Yeah.
But it is funny. It's like, oh, you're eating a pickle and drinking a root beer for breakfast. That's unhealthy. You should have your healthy breakfast, part of your healthy breakfast.
Sugar Smacks.
With milk, orange juice, eggs, a multivitamin. What part of breakfast is this? Dessert?
Right.
Yes, because with the name like Sugar Smacks, you're getting your daily fill of what's this sugar here. So that must be what it is.
Smacks.
So the main ingredient, it says it's sugar and hydrogenated corn oil. What?
Hey, you know what though? Yeah. I will say, watching it with all the cartoons, like it made it more enjoyable for sure.
The commercials were amazing.
Right.
Commercials were amazing. To see the two back-to-back Captain Crunch commercials with Jean the Foot instead of Jean Lafitte, that was hilarious.
And the Crunchberry monster as well, which is a thing that doesn't get a lot of representation in 2023. The big yellow crunch monster.
So, and to have like Barney Rubble was having a crisis of faith around.
Yeah. Well, there was at one point Yogi Bear on Noah's Ark, and I was just very,
how?
I was very confused. He's like, here we are on Noah's Ark. All right, well, that's not a bingo card slot that I think anybody would have had, but we're here now. The cartoons were better than the cartoon. The ads were better than the cartoon itself.
And then, of course, you saw the Jackson 5 for Alpha Bits.
Yes.
Yeah, I was wow, okay, all right, we're getting what we know, and then the Barbie commercial, Barbie camping.
Mm-hmm.
I know, right?
So Yogi's Ark Lark was another one of these Saturday morning superstar movies. It was the second episode of this season. Though it sounded like, coming up next week, we're gonna hear from me. I'm gonna be on Noah's Ark.
Like I said, and Huckleberry Hound is going to be finding out where the Spear of Longinus is. It's like, what is going on? It's such a weird thing to contrast Yogi Bear with. Let's just, it's like, I found a piece of St. John the Baptist toe. Okay,
look,
Fred.
Snagglepuss is there.
This
I'm burning down Rome. Exit stage left. Yeah.
You mean I've got to tear those gladiators to bits?
All of this is just way better than what they put forward. My God, Yogi's Ark Lark.
Come on, you guys. They literally were like, okay, we're going to have a bunch of various animal cartoon characters. Where do animals gather? A zoo. Oh, a zoo. Really great idea, Jenkins. Low-hanging fruit. How about something a little bit more original? Okay, how about Noah's Ark, motherfucker?
Buddy. Yeah.
That's thinking. That's what I like. Noah's Ark. It's also for kids. It's religious. I love it. I was kidding. No, we're using it.
Oh,
and
man.
when Yogi talks to Noah, it's going to be a hoot.
I mean, it's probably going to be Yogi and Boo Boo rather than Yogi and a female bear, right?
Oh, yeah. No. It's going to be Boo Boo. Boo Boo. I don't think this is enough cubits.
Right. What's a cubit?
Nice. Well, there we go. And now we've come full circle into the cause.
I will say, for me, as a child of the 90s who had a lot of toys advertised to me, the toy ads were shockingly disappointing.
Yeah.
Weebles.
Oh, I loved Weebles.
A toy that
Weebles.
tilts over.
Yeah, Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down, Chris.
This is the action form and function, is that it just tilts over.
It's an egg with a magnet or a piece of metal in the bottom.
So we got a lot of these these pear-shaped pieces of wood. What do you guys think we should do with them? Put some magnets in the bottom. Kids will love them.
Were you excited about G.I. Joe Secret Mummy Retrieval?
Only you can figure out how it ends by buying this product. It actually, I think, really speaks to what this is about. Because it's not about the cartoon. And I think probably we would have realized that even more so if Red Baron had the cartoon, like the ads, or any of these, or Willie Mays had the ads, because the ads are so entertaining and everything in between is not. But it's just keep them in front of the screen for 7 more minutes until we can get to the ads.
Yeah, the ads were my favorite part, I think.
They were good. They were actually the Captain Crunch ad with the back-to-back ad was more entertaining and told a better 1.5-minute long story than this 45-minute thing did. Because that's the other thing. This is a essentially featured length. It did not need to be this long, at all. It's dragging by the first 10 minutes, but by the time we go to the third or fourth, like you mentioned, fugue state, it's I don't need to see this again, because they're not going to do anything with it. They never do. Even if we're seeing characters from the real world, I guess.
Because the fantasy doesn't propel the main narrative in any way. It just takes you out of the main narrative, explores the characters a little bit, and then brings you right back into it. It's not like she's solving problems or something.
No.
Actually, it's really Donald is the one with the problem in this show. It's oh no, I've got a problem. My girlfriend is going into the workplace and now she's a little bit too busy to devote herself exclusively to my needs.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, she's sort of but Donald, you're the one who said I should go for this job. He's I said you should get a job, not a whole new lifestyle that's going to occupy your time when really I need you as just an accessory to my lifestyle.
Yeah.
I can't stop making this a feminist manifesto.
I mean, I don't blame you, because it does feel very he's very selfish.
Right. Well,
and it doesn't ingratiate the character to the audience when he's you're working.
Right.
What the fuck do you expect, bro? She's got to pay her rent somehow, pal.
Right.
She's Anne-Marie. He's just Donald.
Yeah, he's just Donald. It's Anne-Marie and it's Donald is what it is, Richard. We all know that.
Well, that's what it should be. Right.
That's what it should be.
I found a lot more. It made a lot more sense. I couldn't find a whole lot of Oppenheimer thematic analogies, but I tried.
When Anne-Marie looks at the screen as I am become death.
Destroyer of worlds. That's when she goes into one of her fantasy states and just destroys the world. And then when we come back, her finger's on the button,
Yeah.
No, Anne-Marie, stop. I must destroy it.
To grow anew, it must be cleansed first. Look, Rankin and Bass, I think, your joke at the beginning of the show, Mike, does ring true at this point. It's like, guys, you have to change with the times, and this is just not going to cut it anymore. Because, like, again, this is 73. I mean, this is a different time and a place. And we're coming up on the 80s where cartoons really start to hit their stride for kids.
Wow.
And the 70s, I mean, the 70s are no slouch either, obviously. Hanna-Barbera, a lot of stuff in the 70s is starting to push the envelope, and this is just lazy and cheap and not compelling. And again, I don't know what kid is going to watch this and go, I want to see more of that. Like, I'm just more like, I'm glad this is over. What's going to be on next?
Right.
Well, having gone through so much of this, and I know we're sort of coming into the end of our time with Rankin and Bass, it is funny that the true innovation and their true success is the stuff we already knew about, which I guess makes sense. It's the stuff that has lived on decade after decade. Rudolph, Heat Miser, Snow Miser. It's those animagic specials that really felt like you were seeing something new and different that you weren't seeing every day. And there was a certain goofy charm to those characters and to those voice characterizations that just continually draw you back, obviously, year after year after year, and become sort of implanted in your soul. That was their innovation. That was their high watermark. And it's so odd that it came first. And it's even odder that in the ensuing 25 years, they never really took steps forward in terms of either design, storytelling, concept. They hit it hard out of the gate, and it was a long decline creatively, as far as I'm concerned.
And we haven't even mentioned, and I think that this is probably even further the craziest thing, none of the voices in here are people that we've seen before. They're not Rankin and Bass regulars. They're no Paul Frees. Romeo Muller's name is not on this anywhere. Like, this is essentially Rankin and Bass in produced and directed by, but that's it.
Right.
Like, in terms of like even the people that we've seen before, like there's not even anything. There's no Maury Laws, even, like, nothing.
I don't think you would know. Like, if you didn't know, you wouldn't know that they had anything to do with this. There's none of, I mean, other than having an animal, but everyone did that. So,
but what's weird is Willie Mays and the Say Hey Kid actually did still kind of feel like Rankin and Bass. Like, this is the first thing we've watched where I'm like, this doesn't feel like Rankin and Bass at all, frankly. Because like, even though like the subject matter is kind of hinky, the story is a little poorly constructed. If I heard Paul Frees's voice, if I heard somebody's voice that I recognize, I might be like, okay, yeah, like they still have the usual group of regulars that come around that are working with them and doing the usual, set of voices. It's not even that. This just seems so foreign to all of the things that we've watched before on this show.
I will say that a couple of the actors have done other things that we've seen or will see. Patricia Bright will be doing the voice in Pinocchio's Christmas, and she was two voices in 'Twas the Night Before Christmas.
That was another cartoon.
Yeah, and then Rhonda Mann was also Mother Nature in The Year Without a Santa Claus. But then you come to like Ted Schwartz, where he is just a Hanna-Barbera Hasbro guy all the way through. Like,
yep.
Doing your Scooby and Scrappy Doo shows. He's doing, Transformers, G.I. Joe.
He was Spider-Man in the 80s as well.
Yeah, he's the one with the most familiar voice for me. Well, and he even shows up in one episode of Barney Miller's show, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Oh, I'd love to see that or know which one it was.
It was the Thanksgiving episode.
Yes, from season 4.
Season 4 Thanksgiving.
So it's been a while.
It has been, yeah.
But I mean, they've been in some. I mean, a couple of those people have been in one other thing. But again,
right. it's not like regulars. Like,
no, it's not Billy Richardson. No. It's not any recognizable voice. And I'm not saying, if Paul Frees had done the voice in the Wizard of the Oz section, it would have been way better. It's like, no, it might have just been a waste of Paul Frees's time more than anything else. Yeah. It wasn't going to save it. It just feels so hands off from like so hands-off and so un-Rankin and Bass. It feels more generic than the most generic things we've already talked about have felt.
And to be honest and to be fair, it's not like other people were doing groundbreaking quality work. Hanna-Barbera, other than the few things we remember, it was not great stuff. No one was, the world of animation at that point was in the gutter. It was for kids. Kids programming was considered nothing except a way to sell breakfast cereal and toys. And so they sort of sank to their level, which was unfortunate because at their best, they were better than anyone.
This is a weird time for animation in the 70s. It's not, there's going to be a huge resurgence coming up in in 5 to 6 years in the 80s. But right now it's just like this is the kind of stuff. And it's, yeah.
Well, I don't think it was until the 80s and later that kids who grew up on this sort of programming began being the people producing the programming. And they came in going, okay, well, I know what we saw, but let's either A, make fun of that, or B, just do it better.
And the other thing I've got to ask, similarly to when we talked about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, so long after the fact, that movie's made, 10, 15 years after the fact, but this came out 2 years after the show was off the air. Like, right. What? What? Like, I don't even understand. Like, was that girl still popular in 73 or had the conversation moved on? Like, it's weird that they're like, oh, that girl has been off the air for 2 years now, Okay. Like, strange again too.
All I can say is going back to the comment Mike made earlier, it was only because it was in syndication. Like I never saw as a child, I never saw that girl at night. It was always on at 9:30 in the morning or something. So again, maybe that was the connection. It's like, well, kids have seen it because it's plays during the day now, so they at least have an opportunity to see it. Beyond that, I'm not sure why that. Other than the fact that they'd already worked with Danny Thomas and Marlo Thomas on Cricket on the Hearth, and so it's like, hey, we had a good time, they had a good time, let's just do this.
It's not like this was being made in 1970 when the show is still on. That it's just the show's been off. So you could have picked a show. I don't know what's on in 73, but you could have picked something that was maybe on in 73 just as a more topical piece of storytelling. I know it's weird because it has the
Partridge Family.
Right. It has the sense of like the story is of a 60s sensibility being told in the mid 70s for the kids, like kids growing up in the 70s, not in the 60s. But yet the story is not like that girl's not for kids. It's just bizarre. This whole thing is bizarre. And I guess the framing device made it stranger than it could have been otherwise. If it had just been, oh, I bumped my head and now I'm in Wonderland, like, kids would probably be okay with that, but there's like inner office stuff and she's talking to her annoying boss. It's like, what fucking kids have bosses in the office? Like they don't, they're far away from that.
Oh no, Anne Marie's going to get fired and then she'll get unemployment and have to now hunt for more jobs. And it's a humiliating experience.
Yeah. Like what kid is saying that in 73? No. Like it's strange. Look, like, another thing, that I think of when I think of animated stuff in 73 is the Star Trek animated series was on in 73.
Wow.
And that's not really it's for kids in the sense that like it's an animated series and it is Star Trek, but like it's better done than this because they understand like the formula because they're just doing Star Trek animated. Like they're trying to force too many things into this and it just doesn't. Like I'm not saying they should have just done a That Girl episode animated, but it might have at least might have spoken to Marlo Thomas's talents better. That's for sure.
Until we come back next month, Chris, what are you up to these days, sir?
Just working on podcasts over at weirdingwaymedia.com. You and I do a whole bunch of 70s. Speaking of the 70s TV shows, we do a whole lot of 70s TV police programming and and then anthology shows and weekly movie podcasts, all the good things that I work on, which you can find over at weirdingwaymedia.com. What about you, Richard?
Well, since I'm on strike because I'm a member of the Writers Guild, I just stay at home and peer in the garage window and watch Susan produce 80s TV Ladies, another podcast on the Weirding Way Network. Mike, what are you up to?
Well, since I'm not part of the WGA, I am currently writing a much needed TV special called Barney Miller in Wonderland.
I I would watch that in a heartbeat.
Yes, I'm going to produce it as if it was made in 1983, 1984, 2 years after Barney Miller went off the air. I'm just aiming for that type of revival type of thing. And then maybe it'll be so popular that there'll be a whole line of other things we can do. Kolchak in Wonderland, Columbo in Wonderland, Night Gallery in Wonderland. It'll be fantastic. Rod Serling wakes up and he's, what is this strange world I'm in? And who is this boss that I can't stand? Jack Laird, what are you doing?
I would give so much to see an animated Barney Miller.
Right?
I want Jack Sue in there. I want Fish.
Well, with Barney, it's great because he's got the mustache. He could just like be behind the mustache the whole time while he's talking, and you just don't even have to do the lip flap.
But what if it was like an exact shot for shot, frame for frame redoing of an episode, just at that same pace? Levitt comes in, Luger, just all of them, but animated.
You could do fantasy casting, man. You could have, like you said, Jack Sue could be there. You could also have Chano there. You could have
just have them all
there.
the same time.
Fucking Mike.
Wentworth.
Mike would be back.
Mike would be in every episode.
Oh man, it'd be amazing. But Mike would be like Wilson from Tool Time, and he'd be like behind the
you'd never see him.
Right.
I thought more that I thought more that Barney's mustache would be sentient. So like you would talk to Barney and then like his mustache would talk to him.
What do you
Barney,
think, mustache?
I don't think about that.
It like
Barney,
flies
I don't
off
like that a whole lot. Yeah.
Flaps around the office.
Yeah. See, that's how you inject the fun into the show.
Yeah. That's why it's animated. It has to be animated.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's weird. There's a couple of geese that live in the station house and they just speak as well. So
it just turns out Wojo was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle in an overcoat the whole time.
Lauren, I really like this pizza. Yes. So I'm working on that. And I'm also working on podcasts that are all available at the weirdingwaymedia.com website. So thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. I want to thank Abby Stabby for our artwork, as well as the Great Octopus for our theme music. Be sure to subscribe to us in your favorite podcast platform. We'll be back next month with a look at Rankin and Bass's The Coneheads, plus some other Rankin and Bass animated works, such as The Jackson 5 and The Osmonds. We are talking pop culture, Rankin and Bass, and animation all together. Very similar to what we've been talking about this week and the previous month. So hopefully things get a little bit better. So until then, be sure to rate and review the podcast wherever you get it. Tell your friends, tell your family, and please stay weird.